Hey guys, everything technology, and if you remember a couple months back, I did a review on Samsung's Galaxy S5, and I exaggerated how before its launch we expected something different in terms of design and a big step up in build quality, but that wasn't the case. Instead, we got another one of Samsung's plastic phones. But this year, Samsung stepped up their game by not launching one, but two amazing flagships, and I'm going to be looking at one of those amazing flagships, the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. Before I get started, I want to clarify that the S6 and the S6 Edge are completely the same phone, except the S6 Edge is curved on the left and the right side. So everything I talk about in this review, other than the design, also applies to the S6. Now, the design of this phone is pretty unique. Why? First of all, because it has a curved screen, and second of all, it's not only different from its previous predecessors, but also from its competitors. So how is this different from its predecessor? Well, like I mentioned earlier, we're used to seeing plastic phones with the same design language from Samsung, but this time we're getting something completely different, but familiar. Different because instead of plastic, we're getting aluminum on the edges of the phone, which is chamfered, and now on the back and the front of the phone, we have Corning Gorilla Glass 4. Familiar because it reminds most of us of the iPhone 4, 5, and 6 combined in terms of design, which is a good thing, meaning it's a big step up in build quality for Samsung. Now, how is this different from its competitors? Instead of this being a completely curved phone, instead it's a curved screen. The only downside is it feels a little bit weird to hold because its sides are thinner, and now the edges of the phone are sharper. Of course, not to the point that it hurts, and I found it very uncomfortable coming from the G3. However, my friend Jordan Floyd says that it feels comfortable and ergonomic, but I don't see it. I guess it just depends on what device you're coming from. With a beautiful design, Samsung had to sacrifice some things, and one of them is expandability. I don't feel that there was a need to sacrifice this, keeping in mind that they could have just done what HTC did with the M8 and the M9. Put a micro SD card slot somewhere on the side. Next, the back isn't removable and they downgraded on the battery. This doesn't make any sense because why would you put a super sharp quad HD screen on a phone, meaning more pixels to push and more battery life consumed, and then downgrade 200 milliamps down? Yes, they probably did this for the design, but this is still unnecessary. Anyway, since Samsung did that, battery life suffers. I get a little bit over 3 hours of on-screen and it didn't even last me a full day of use. However, to compensate, now we have wireless charging and adaptive fast charging, which work very well. Since Samsung used glass on both sides of the phone, durability is going to suffer unless you have a case, but that Corning Gorilla Glass 4 handles scratches fairly well, and it's a big fingerprint magnet. In terms of my use, I'm pretty good with my phones and I've never cracked one, so it handles very well. Now, taking a look around the device, on the front we're greeted with Samsung's brand new Quad HD display. So this is the best display on the market as of now on. It's a 5.1-inch screen with a resolution of 2560 by 1440 with a PPI of 577, making this display extremely sharp. The colors are saturated so everything feels like it's popping out. The viewing angles are great, and this is the brightest display I've ever seen on any phone, making it an enjoyable experience using it outside. Above the display are some sensors, a calling speaker grill which sounds pretty loud and clear, and a 5 megapixel camera which I'll be talking about later in the video. Below the display is Samsung's old-fashioned home button, which is a little bit more circular because it serves as Samsung's new fingerprint scanner. So instead of it swiping down to unlock like the previous predecessor, now it works like Touch ID, and also the software to register your fingerprint mimics Touch ID, which is a good thing because now it's so much more accurate and efficient than the previous one. However, I did come upon some problems. A couple of days after I received the phone, I was trying to unlock the device, but it wasn't recognizing my fingerprint at all. Luckily, I had a backup password. Then, the second time it happened to me, again it wasn't recognizing my fingerprint and also my backup password and even my Google account that they instructed me to use as an extra backup. So this caused me to put my phone on recovery mode and restore it to factory settings, which sucked. I'm assuming it's a software problem rather than a hardware problem, but anyway, Samsung, fix it. Neighboring the home buttons are the touch keys, which I still find a little bit hard to get used to just because I've been using Samsung Galaxy devices for a very long time, and if you remember, back when the S5 was released, they replaced the menu button with a multitasking button, but other than that, they work perfectly for my use. On the left side there is a volume up and volume down, and on the right there is a power button, and they feel extremely tactile, including the home button. On top of the device is a mic, an IR blaster, which allows you to use your device as a universal remote, and it works so well to the point that it doesn't require you to point directly at the TV like the G3. Anyway, beside that is an anal SIM card slot. Below the device is where you notice Samsung got a lot of inspiration from Apple. Copycat. Anyhow, there's a headphone jack port, micro USB charging port, mic, and surprisingly loud speakers, which sound pretty good. Now, on the back, you notice that there isn't any carrier branding, which is pretty nice, and actually have the T-Mobile variant. So on the back, we'll first notice the protruding 60 megapixel camera, which I'll be talking about later in the video, and beside that is a heart rate monitor and LED flash. Since this is Samsung's latest flagship, meaning it should have the latest specs, and it sure does. It has an Exynos 64-bit octa-core processor. Furthermore, it has a Mali T760 MP8 GPU, which handles games like Modern Combat very well, and it has an incredible 3GB of DDR4 RAM. With all this, the software is very fast and snappy. Speaking of the software, a lot of people are not a big fan of TouchWiz because it tends to slow down after a couple of months and it has a lot of unnecessary features. But if you personally know me, I'm actually a pretty big fan of TouchWiz, and I've noticed there's something completely different in this version of TouchWiz, and that's how fast it is and how toned down. I mean, you're losing all the gimmicks like air view, smart pause, and even air gestures, and oh my gosh, this is really snappy. As in, navigating is a breeze, all the apps open and close very fast, and the multitasking menu is very responsive and smooth. We also have My Magazine with the quick swipe to the right on the home screen, and it's still not as responsive as it should be, but the information it displays is very useful. The setting application is just a little bit easier to navigate since there's a dedicated search bar. Built into the software is Samsung's new theme engine, which I didn't really use, but it allows you to customize how the phone appears, anything from the icons to the notification menu. Now, since I have the S6 Edge, you will get some additional software functionality like edge lighting, people edge, information screen, and night clock, which I use every night. Finally, the camera on this cool cat is incredible. It has a 16 megapixel f1.9 camera with OIS, and it's capable of recording amazing 4K video at 30 FPS, 1080p video at 60 FPS, and even 720p video up to 120 FPS, making this one, or if not, the best cell phone cameras in the market as of now on. When you first open up the camera app, you'll notice how much more easier it is to navigate. Taking pictures is a breeze, and it always nails it the very first time, unlike most cameras. Now, the image taken on the camera are extremely sharp and detailed, the dynamic range is solid, the images are saturated and pop out, and has a nice depth of field. In terms of low light, it performs fairly well, and it does a pretty good job in picking up more light because of that f1.9 aperture, but sometimes you will notice some grain and noise. If you're a professional photographer, you'll enjoy the Pro mode on this camera since it allows you to manually control everything from the ISO, exposure, to even the focus. Videos on this camera are amazing. Be sure to check out my 4K video test. It will be linked down below in the description. The S6 has a 5 megapixel front facing camera, which is really wide angle, and is capable of recording quad HD videos at 30 FPS. It's probably again one, or if not the best front facing cameras on any cell phone. It takes some really wide angle pictures that look very nice in good lighting, but suffers in low lighting in terms of grain and noise. It has very detailed video, but again, like taking pictures, it suffers in low light. Overall, this is a spectacular phone. Samsung finally listened to our complaints in terms of build quality, and finally somebody beats Apple's image processing and consistency. This is probably the closest thing to perfect on any smartphone right now. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and if you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave me a thumbs up down below, and also comment down below if you have any feedback, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Bye.